Most of you may be familiar with amyloid beta, right?
I'm not.
Okay. So, our concern is that as we age, everybody, I would imagine, would want to make sure that our brain is functioning, right? Because, neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's in particular, right? It's a very, very sad condition and to have to live with and see your loved ones have to live with. So there are some new markers, and we're going to talk about those. So amyloid beta is the plaque that forms in your brain, right, in arteries. So there are two primary amyloid beta tests that have been well studied. So we have amyloid beta 1 to 40 and amyloid beta 1 to 42. And what you want to do is look at the ratio of 1 to 42 and 1 to 40. This is just the protein, the length of the protein, okay? So amyloid beta 1 to 40 is not as soluble in blood as 1 to 42, okay? So, which is why you want to look at a ratio. Now, before, these tests would be done on spinal fluid, right? Cerebral spinal fluid, which to get that is invasive. But studies have been done now that are well documented for amyloid beta in serum or plasma. And so we look at the ratios. We were all fine for the most part. The 1 to 40 was very low, and then we all had some 1 to 42, which is expected, but it was all, not in a range that's concerning. Now, this ratio, amyloid beta, it's an early marker for Alzheimer's, along with some of the others that we'll talk about, and can really tell you your risk for developing Alzheimer's 30 years from now. So it's a really important marker to be checking for to ensure you're not, 20 years from now, you're faced with a big surprise when your levels are high. It really does tell you, it's a good marker. It tells you what you need to take, pay attention to now to prevent something, to having neurodegenerative conditions, concerns about it later.
So I don't have to wait till I'm in my latter part of my life. I don't have to wait till I'm in my 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s to get this test done. You just said I could do this 30 years before I was concerned about Alzheimer's and other types of dementia. So that is huge. Why aren't we testing for that earlier? Why isn't, if it's that big of an indicator, let's talk about that.
Well, this plus the tau proteins. So tau proteins, those are the tangles in the brain. So the proteins tangle, they become phosphorylated. So we're measuring for phosphorylated tau proteins. Now, why we didn't measure it? Because before the assay kits were only validated for CSF, cerebral spinal fluid, which you can only obtain from a brain tap, right? So now the assays have been developed where we can use plasma, sometimes serum, depending on the kit. And so amyloid beta as well as the tau proteins. And what's not on here, which I'm going to add, is a particular phosphorylated tau protein, which is 217. So there are different proteins. There's 182, 231 that have been studied, and then 217, which more and more research is showing that it is a better marker, right? It's a more predictive marker. So when you're doing research and you're looking for markers, the markers that are better predictive are the ones that you see lower level, the level that you would see in a person without a condition and the level you would see in a person with the condition and the level you see with a person that develops a condition, there should be big differences. So it's not ambiguous. Okay. And right. So a normal person, let's say for argument's sake, the level is 1. In a person with Alzheimer's, full blown, 80 years, 90 years old, that level is 100. So there's a huge difference. But what is that level in somebody who is 50 years old or 60 years old, right? So the level shouldn't be 1.1. That's too close to 1. Then that's not a good marker. The level should be 10 or 20 or 30. Then you say, okay, here is something of concern. We need to watch that. You need to do something about it. You have to change your diet and so forth.
So just like the markers for a cholesterol panel, where I can change my cholesterol with lifestyle and diet and different interventions, I can do the same thing with this brain function as well. It's not too late. Even if my numbers right now at age 55 are showing up, it's not too late for me to step in and make a change.
Correct. So ideally you want to do it now when if you do have an increased level, you could do something about it. It will not be increased to the point where you have an Alzheimer's diagnosis, right? Where you're diagnosed with Alzheimer's. These markers can start becoming elevated 30 years before you have symptoms of Alzheimer's and you can get a diagnosis, which is why there's so much research and excitement about these particular markers, especially the phosphorylated tau proteins. There are 3 in particular, and what the literature and research is showing is that the tau protein 217 is actually the best marker out of all the tau proteins that are out there. So because a person could have elevated levels but not have any signs of Alzheimer's.
Okay.
You want to be able to see that if you have that, so you can start addressing it right now before it gets to a level where you do get a diagnosis of neurodegeneration.
And your lab is going to start testing for that with all the new research that's coming in.
Yes.
You're going to add that to part of the brain function test.
Yes.
That's super exciting.
Right now we have, we measure amyloid beta 1 to 40 and 1 to 42. We look at that ratio. We measure total tau proteins, and then we measure total phosphorylated tau proteins, which are worse than tau proteins themselves. So it's when it becomes phosphorylated and you have the tangle. So you don't want to have a high level of phosphorylated tau proteins. So right now we're looking at that total, but what we're going to start looking at is a particular phosphorylated tau protein 217. Okay, so that will give us an even better picture of what's happening in our brain. Okay, so and we'll be able to, set our minds at ease because we're all like, oh, you have those that you're forgetful, like, oh, what was that again? What was the name of that? What was it? So of course we start thinking, oh, do I need to be concerned? Well, we all need to be concerned. We all should be doing things to improve and maintain our brain function. But, there is a test that could tell us what's going on in our brain. That's non-invasive. It's not a spinal tap. It's not a PET scan, right? So that's why there is just so much research on it and excitement about it.